Ricardo, can you hear me? Ricardo? Basbaum? Oi. Oi, Ricardo. Consegue escutar? Sim? Não? Oi, Ricardo. Tudo bem? Você pode dar algum sinal com a mão, que a gente não está te escutando?
Okay. Do you hear us, Ricardo? Yes? No. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the jury, dear Vijay, dear Ricardo from Brazil. Welcome to the Viva of Vijai Maia Patchineelam, the PhD defense. Vijay has finished a doctoral dissertation in order to obtain the degree of Doctor in the Arts, Doctor in de Kunsten, as they say in Dutch. And the title of the dissertation is The Artist Job Description for the Employment of the Artist as an Artist Inside the Art Institution. Since he has also fulfilled the requirements of the University of Antwerp's doctoral program, he gets the chance to publicly defend his dissertation today. That is the reason why we are here. So let me first start by introducing the jury. My name is Philippe Meers. I'm from the University of Antwerp. I will be chairing this event. But the jury consists of the supervisors, who will remain silent during the full procedure of this Viva. They only get the word after the official part. And these are Dr. Nico Dockx from the Academy and Professor Dr. Paolo Silvio Harald Favero from the University of Antwerp. The members of the jury are from Brazil, Professor Dr. Ricardo Basbaum from the Universidade Federal Fluminense, pardon my Portuguese. Lilia Mestre, Artistic Coordinator from a.pass. The PhD candidate, Saddie Choua, artist and lecturer at Ritz and St. Lucas, Antwerp. Vladimir Miller from a.pass as well, curator. So these are the members of the jury that will make Vijay's life hard for just a moment. The defense will proceed as follows. First, we give the floor to the candidate. He will give us a presentation of his work of about 30 minutes, mostly for the members of the audience, as the jury members all know his work thoroughly. After that first introduction, I will give the word to each member of the jury. They have around 15 minutes for questions, comments, discussions, interactions, conversations with the candidate. This will take a while. After this Q&A session is done, I will open up the floor to the audience to see if there are questions in the audience, and then I will close temporarily the session. We will go to another room to deliberate. We will come back with the results, so do not run away at that phase. And after the proclamation, the supervisors get the floor for their laudatio, their praise. And then probably the candidate, by then doctor will address his audience. So, I would also kindly request you to put your cell phones on flight mode. We are taking off in a few seconds, so thank you for that. And then I give the floor to the PhD candidate, Vijay.
I'm not going to use a slide presentation. This will all happen over in the TV screen, and I will manage the different publications and research outputs over the last 6 years here. So I'm going to start by reading a small text, introductory text to the research. I would like to start this presentation by pointing out the importance of the PhD in the arts in providing the necessary conditions that have made possible the transformation of an artistic practice which had been struggling with its meaning and purpose to find its way again, transforming itself into an institutional practice. When I set out to develop the research, the artist's job description, a practice-led research for the employment of the artist as an artist. It's too loud? Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah? Okay. So I'll pick up from the second paragraph. When I set out to develop the research, the artist's job description, a practice-led research for the employment of the artist as an artist inside the art institution, the title served the double function of being a probe. Early on, I intuitively understood that the title was less about setting in place an objective or goal to reach, and more about initiating a process of probing into something. What I mean when I say that the title functioned as a probe is that the title itself suggests a device that can be placed inside something in order to test and or record information from that something. Having in mind that once this device was deployed, it carried along and placed my artistic practice inside this something, the art institution. In the end publication, the artist's job description, which I will soon get into, I refer to institutions as machine body. I refer to as such with the intention of acknowledging the structural aspects of institution, as well as the people that's made out of. A good friend of mine once told me during an afternoon walk that for a specific project, she went into an institution to get rid of self-instituting habits that she has developed over time in relation to art institution, which she claims have hampered different aspects of her life. Her strategy to enter institutions to break self-instituting habits, as I understood, was her attempt to undo the imprints of these structures over her practice and self. In my case, I didn't look to get rid of these imprints, but to research these imprints over an artistic practice and the artist that came along with it. In order to do so, and because this was also the case of a practice-led research, I needed to develop a set of artistic strategies to be able to learn how to recognize these imprints and then experiment with the potential material plasticity of these structures. Before we start, a small note on this presentation. The presentation will be conducted through the printed material generated during this research, such as the photograph of the new participants' kitchen at the Jan van Eyck Academy, the photo book Samba Shiva, the end publication, the artist's job description, and the double live album Plano B, which is here over the table. So I'm going to start with the kitchen, which was the moment that started this whole mess, I would say. This is a photograph of the new kitchen's participant at the Jan van Eyck Academy. This kitchen was made about 2-3 years after I left the Jan van Eyck Academy. And it's a direct result of me, with the help of other colleagues at the Jan van Eyck, of turning my individual studio into a collective kitchen. And this was a response to some things that were happening at the Jan van Eyck at that time, which some of the participants were not in agreement of. So one second, let me just gather my thoughts. So the thing is that when I entered the Jan van Eyck with my other colleagues, we came in during the new program of a new director that was responding to some cuts on the Dutch cultural scene. So this new academy that we came in had to be self-sufficient and change a lot of its structure. So when we came in, the participants' canteen, and the staff canteen, was removed. And what they did is that they removed this canteen and replaced it with a cafe, a restaurant. And a cafe that worked during working hours. So we were not allowed to use that cafe in the evening or early mornings or even in the night. So as a response to that, and because I was not using my studio, I decided to open up my studio and install a makeshift kitchen, which was for use for all of the participants and staff and advisors, who wanted to use a kitchen to heat up their lunch or tea or whatever. So that was met by the academy with some resistance. They were not very happy with the kitchen, because the kitchen didn't go with the plan of this new program that they wanted to implement. And for the last 6 months, when I was at the academy, I had to kind of protect the kitchen from being closed by the academy. So once that experience ended, the academy decided to prohibit cooking inside studios. So that in the next contract with the artists who were coming in, there was a small clause prohibiting these cooking utensils, anything that indicated that cooking was happening inside the studio. And then after 2 years or 3 years of complaint, this new kitchen was made, because it was a real need from the participants, not to have a place, not only to be able to cook and make their coffee and have lunch, but a kind of informal gathering place where the participants and also the advisors could meet and have an informal dinner or informal talk, because the rest of the building was very much designed for production. No? So you were either producing a work at the wood workshop, or editing a video in an editing island, or giving a lecture such as today in the lecture hall. So there was no informal space for us to gather, except the basement that was a sort of a kind of makeshift place that we would sometimes gather to have movie nights and things like this. So the kitchen served as this space, informal, but also private, no? So that we were not exposed to the public, so we could have a little bit of some unmediated fun, let's say. So this kitchen was very important to me because it created this tension with the institution and put me in a place where I had to negotiate that tension with the institution, and I had to justify this, this proposal which I made, which was that this informal kitchen, this makeshift kitchen that ran for about 6 to 8 months. So this is the Jan van Eyck new participant kitchen, just to have in mind this is not my kitchen. But I show it today as a way of, let's say, appropriating partly this new kitchen. One last thing that I wanted to mention, the kitchen was also an attempt to come into dialogue with the institution, with the director and the other administrative employees, something that didn't happen then. So I'm going to read, no, maybe I'll skip. I'll go to the second project, which is the photo book Samba Shiva, the photographs of Samba Shiva, Maia Patchineelam, who's my father, but also a scientist and an amateur photographer who took a lot of photographs from his personal life, his professional life during the 70s and 80s. This book was published by Instituto Moreira Salles, a non-profit private institution in São Paulo, Brazil. And it's a result of a production grant, which I won in 2016. And in that, for this production grant, I wrote a proposal in which I proposed that I would work as an artist editor, and I would edit the book of Samba Shiva, who's my father, scientist and amateur photographer, and to publish him as a photographer while I worked as an editor artist. And for me, it was important to propose this new role when coming into the institution because of what I had learned with the previous experience of the kitchen. I wanted to come into an institution, in a different role, not as an artist, just as an artist who is making his work in his own kind of private space, the artist studio, but someone who comes into institution and interacts with that institution in a slight different role. Back then, I didn't have I didn't know that this new role would cause moments of friction. In this case, there were no tension, just some friction, some communication, some conversation, some dialogue. But I knew that this new role would intuitively give me, there was potential there to maybe recreate this gray area that the kitchen created in the Jan van Eyck. So I was interested in that. I was interested in this gray area. So with this book, I proposed to publish my father and to work as an editor and and to work next to the institution to make such a book. This is an institution that's known for high photography. They publish photographers like Robert Frank, William Eggleston, and many others. So for me, it was also a challenge to see if I could, working as an editor, publishing an amateur photographer, if I could edit and publish a book that could sit next to these well-regarded artists, let's say. So in the process of making the book, there were a lot of moments which I sort of started to describe, moments where some things had to be negotiated either with the institution or with collaborators. To make this book, I invited a series of collaborators, mainly the writer Hemant Sarin, who's based in New Delhi, the designers Roberta Bratovic and Nina Bachum, and the curator Beatriz Lemos, who interviewed my father. And so I will read an excerpt from the Ant publication, the artist's job description, that talks about a moment where at first I was going to publish my father, work as an editor, and have my name only in the colophon, in the back of the book, and to have my father really in the claiming all the authorship of the project. But, no, sorry, it's in the other book. One second. So when I was conceptualizing the book, at first I wanted the authorship to remain just on my father's name, and I didn't want to share that space with my father. So it was important to me, for the reader, to know that this book was a book of photographs taken by my father, and not me, an artist who appropriated his collection of photographs. And at that time, I was thinking that maybe I would appear in the colophon. But while working with Hemant pushed me to claim some of the authorship. And he did this by writing a text that starts by referencing me as the son who initiated this project. So in a way, Hemant did me a favor by pushing me to claim authorship, and also not leaving my father alone in the stage and going with him. So I'm going to read just a small excerpt of the Hemant's text. Hemant's text is called The Camera Tells Its Own Tale. And the first chapter, so Samba Shiva is Vijai Patchineelam's attempt at a poetics of immigration and identity through an engagement with his father, Samba Shiva's photographic record of his migratory journeys. Samba Shiva left India in 1967 for higher education in Austria and Germany, after which work and education would take him to Brazil in 1979. After moving to Salvador, he would meet his future wife and would decide to settle down in Brazil and start a family. For Patchineelam, Hemant is referring to me now, fleshing out the momentous and unlikely journey is an act of an invention of a parent, a narrative, and a language that affirms his own existence. Built with Samba Shiva's photographic vocabulary, Patchineelam's language is once deictic and poetic. So this is Hemant's text who forced me to claim part of the authorship. And that's why we had to I couldn't hide in the colophon in the back because the text refers to me, so for the reader it would be a little confusing. So what we did is, together with Nina and Roberta, the title of the book comes in the middle of the book, because that's another thing of how it's structured, but my father's names come first, and then on the next spread, my name comes as an editor-organizer next to the institution, which is Instituto Moreira Salles. So this project took quite some time. I scanned all of the slides myself and treated them. And to do that, I had a lot of help from the Institute's staff, the people who already work with restoring old negatives and making books. No? And I had an assistant who worked closely with me, Angelo, and I will now read a small excerpt of Angelo, where he talks about what this book created inside the institution. No? So before I talked about my relationship with my collaborators, Hemant, and now I'll read an excerpt about someone I worked with in the institution. So this is a comment by Angelo Manjabosco, assistant to the coordinator of contemporary photography at Instituto Moreira Salles. And this is a comment he made while I did a public talk similar to this in São Paulo when the book came out. And I asked Angelo to talk about the contract, no? That we had to sign when the book was published and was going to be sold. So Angelo said, you saw that Vijay's work has many of these provocations for the reader, often for the publisher itself, which in this case was EMS, which is Instituto Moreira Salles. When I came into the work that was to help edit the book, I could never really understand if Vijay's work was the book or if it was to make the book. Do you understand? And I think it's a little bit of both. And then I always felt a little bit like I was kind of a part of a trial and error apparatus at time, a kind of intervention by Vijay inside something that already works in a certain way, that already has a logic. So he's talking about how the project came into this institution that has a way of working, a kind of streamlined way of dealing with artist publication. And once this project came in, it started to move around and creating these different moments of having to renegotiate things that were already streamlined, no? So I'll continue. Vijay mentioned the contract, and the contract is a very clear case in that sense, that the standard contract for book publications in EMS, it has a certain defined structure and such. And then what happened when I was about to make the contract with Vijay, Vijay sent an email saying the following: look, I'm not the artist, it's my father who's the artist. So it wasn't a book that had an artist and a publisher. We spent weeks thinking about how to define it. The legal department went a little nuts over this issue, resulting in a long back and forth between us. Vijay showed it to his father a few times before it came back to us. But finally, Vijay managed to create a short circuit, at least in this more direct relationship with the legal department, due to the contract. Vijay had this back and forth there that was a little hard to adjust. So this is Angelo's comment on the project in a public event in the institution in São Paulo, where we openly talked about certain aspects of the contract. And this is something important for my project because especially this book that has kind of two layers. It has this side that deals with the PhD itself, but it also has a side that's much more personal, that talks about my background, talks about my father's journey, leaving India, coming to Europe to study, then going to Brazil, settling down. So it also talks about Indian diaspora. It talks about a kind of singular trajectory because in Brazil there isn't a large community of migrants from India. So it talks about that, talks about his profession as well. He's a scientist, so the photographs, they mix not only family portraits, but also field trips where he went in order to do his research, no? So I'll just take a little time just to show some of the photographs because my father's here, so I think it's nice to feature him a little bit. So for example, these photographs here, it's from a research trip that he took from the boat left Germany, I think, Bremen, went, if I'm not mistaken, went through the Panama Canal, went up to Hawaii, Galapagos. They were researching pollution in the Pacific Ocean in the water back then. So it was a kind of special trip. A lot of scientists went in order to research the pollution in the water, but also I think they were mapping manganese in the water bed, the ocean's bed. So these are manganese nodules that you see here that they were trying to map and see where they were. This is inside the boat. This boat is called Sun. This was a shark that was fished out of the water and then sent back. And then some portraits of family members. This is my uncle, Suryo, who passed away some years ago, and some photographs that my father took while in this trip in the Pacific, but also in the west coast of the US. I think this is, yeah, west coast of the US. This is a volcano, I think Hawaii. This is my aunt. So it talks about this, no? Not only my father's family and personal life, but also this profession. This, for example, is in Galapagos, no? This is a sonda, it's a probe, no? This, I think, it's a kind of instrument that you gather samples to research. And then the book, the first part is this professional moment. You have mostly India, and then towards the end, India kind of fades out, and then Brazil fades in, where he met my mother, settled down, had my brother, my sister, and I. No? So I'll skip a little bit just so that we can see some photos in Brazil. So this is already Brazil. And India. So I wanted to have this kind of, I wanted the book not to explain itself too much so that the reader gets a bit lost in the different places. So for example, here on the right is Brazil, photographed in Salvador, Bahia, and on the left in India. And then if you know the cultural signs of each place, then you start understanding, okay, you can locate these things. But for a reader who just comes to the book fresh, he has to really struggle, or not struggle, but grapple with all these clues, because nothing is given up front. This is a photograph of my mother, who is also a scientist, an oceanographer. And yeah. And then the book, see, this is a sample that my father took. So I also wanted to show this different type of photography, no? This is a photograph that you use as a reference later on for your work. This is sort of the process, the field trip with the other scientists. And then you have some snapshots, then you have these portraits. So you have different kinds of photography in the book. And I wanted to have that in the book. Yeah. And then this is Salvador, Bahia. This is close to the Museum of Modern Art. I think this is Praia Vermelha, for those who know. And then the book ends with my brother, who was born before me. So I'm not in the book, my sister also. This is in 1981, so it ends there. And then you have a postcard that my father sent to his brother, talking about this research trip and talking about a potential job in Brazil. So the postcard, which is in my father's voice, no? He wrote this portrait, kind of explains what happens before to the reader. So then the reader understands, okay, maybe this guy was a scientist because he's looking for a job in a university. He has an Indian name, so he's Indian. This job is in Brazil. So then you start, the clues start coming to one place. And then I felt it was important to have a text by someone who could contextualize the reasons for my father leaving India back then. It was known as the brain drain in India. So a lot of people went abroad to study, and some things that were happening politically in India back then. Yeah, okay, so I'll move because the time is a bit short. And yeah, that's. And this is the end publication for this PhD, the artist's job description. This publication, it's fresh. I only have 5 copies. They're printed in Zagreb, so I was not able to ship them all here. So I have 5 copies to show today. And I will explain a little bit the structure of the book and the different participants, and then I'll talk more in depth about one contribution to this book. So the book, the core of the book are public talks, like today. So it was a talk right after I left the Jan van Eyck and I applied for the PhD. In this talk in Vienna in 2015, I talk about this idea of this job position for artists and that I wanted to apply. So I was talking about a proposal then. And then during that residency, I got to notice that I was going to continue with the PhD. Then the kitchen is a big part of this book. You have a conversation which never took never took place back then, but then during the PhD I was able to go talk to the former head programmer curator, Hope, and Alessandra, who was a curator but a colleague then. So we reflect about what happened in the kitchen and the response from the institution to the kitchen and how we saw the kitchen as participants. Then you have a talk in Gothenburg in a conference where I talk about my father's book. And then in between, I have introductions to each part where I reflect about it. Because in these conversations, I'm very much in the process, so I'm talking kind of like a bit like today, really about the process and details, why I took some decisions and not others, who forced me to make this decision and not to others, like, for example, Hemant forcing me to take part of the authorship. It was a kind of, it was also a way that I wanted to continue working a little bit more collectively, together with other people, and that not all of the decision-making is based solely on my subjectivity, but actually in relation to other people. So there's this relationship with the institution, but also the relationship with the collaborators and peers, mediating with the institution. So this is the first part of the book. The middle of the book, there's an intermission, is a photographic essay called Thickets. And it's like the background of this shot. It's photographs of thickets, bushes, and trees of the different places that I traveled in order to make this research for the last 6 years. So here you have a big mix of photographs from India, Brazil, Montenegro, and the photograph of the new participant kitchen, snuck in between the other ones. So that's the intermission. The intermission actually comes out of the book. So the book, there's a gap. If you take it out, there's a gap in the book. And then the second part of the book, and this is important, the intermission was to kind of separate the two parts, because this second part of the book is actually a research seminar. A research seminar that, as a PhD student in Antwerp, we have to organize. I was never able to organize to happen live because of Corona, of the COVID pandemic, so I decided to have a printed seminar. And for that, I invited different artists. Some of them are here today. Pia, Adriana is here. And I invited artists who I felt had similar, worked in similar ways or had used similar strategies of approaching or engaging with institutions, that they just didn't accept the conditions that were given to them, but renegotiated them at every moment, no? And that was not just something that happened backdoors, but something that happened as part of the work. So time is short, so I will go straight to one contribution that relates to the academy. I invited 3 alumni from the academy, Avi, Felix, and Julia, to contribute to the seminar with their efforts of organizing a survey in relation to the academy and in relation to what was happening at that moment. This was 2020, before the summer. So it was when the Black Lives movement was very active, and a lot of protests were happening worldwide, in Belgium as well. This group of students, they decided to create a survey to talk about different moments of discrimination inside the academy that students, staff, and faculty members happened or experienced. So I asked them to participate in this seminar to talk about this, but they, instead of talking about it or writing a text, they proposed to actually publish the survey. The survey was published online in 2020, But they asked me, we would like to actually publish the survey in its full length as part of the research seminar. So working as an editor and being part of the academy back then, I was employed, I had to make a decision, no? As an organizer of this research, but also as an employee of the academy, of how would I deal or how would I accommodate this proposal that they had. So for that, I wrote an introduction text in the survey in order for the reader to have some context and background as to the survey that follows. Me, with this group of alumni, we talked to different people of the academy. We talked to the dean, we talked to my advisors, we talked to a series of people to gather some comments, feedbacks on how to deal with this survey and how to reintroduce the survey into the academy. It was important to have this published inside the academy, to have it as a reference, as a precedent to future people who are interested in this subject or who also suffer the same experiences and want to understand why is that happening to them. And it's not a kind of individual experience, but sometimes, or shared in some cases, an experience that is shared. So this is the book. So, and then I have to wrap up. I'll just show one last thing. This is an ongoing project, special project for me. This is a double LP of live shows that happen in a makeshift artist-run space, which was a vinyl shop during the days, and on the weekend was a cultural space called Plano B. And Plano B ran for almost 10 years, from 2004 to 2013. A series of bands from all over the world played there, from Japan, Belgium, Sweden, Brazil. A lot of the kind of well-known bands today in the music scene in Brazil, a lot of them played in Plano B, and a lot of visual artists also played or exhibited in Plano B. It was a very special place for a lot of us in Rio at that time. So this is an ongoing project. Because of the COVID pandemic, I was not able to launch it in Rio yet. And for me, in order for this project to continue, I really need to launch it in Rio to see how the scene reacts to this, or reacts to this proposal. Because my intention is I'm working with the founder, Fernando S. Torres, and me and Fernando, we backed up all of the live shows, and we organized this LP with the attempt to try to get some interest again in Plano B and an institution who would be willing to host this archive of live shows. There's over 300 live shows from all over. So this is ongoing. That's why I showed last. It's not in the end publication, only on a footnote where I refer to some things that I learned while working with Fernando. It was important to me to work with other artists like Fernando, who taught me a lot about how to treat collaborators, how to think about this research in a way that would help artists, especially, and Fernando and everyone, Pia, Adriana, Avi, Felix, Julia, they really helped me understand the responsibility also of proposing this this position and this new way of working that I managed to develop for myself. So yeah, I think I'm going to end it here. We're a little bit over already, no? Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, Vijay, for your talk. And almost sticking to the time. Huh? You took some artistic freedom there, but no problem. So we give the floor now, we open the Q&A, we give the floor to Professor Basbaum, who is the furthest away from Antwerp, and who is talking to us from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. You have to unmute. Ricardo? We don't hear you. Could you say something? No. No sound. If we don't get it solved immediately, I suggest we go to the second member and try to solve this for you soon, Ricardo, if that is okay with you. Yes? Then it is my pleasure to give the floor to Lilia Mestre from a.pass.
Thank you. Thank you, Vijay. So I'm very interested by the performativity of the artist. So how the artist performs within that institutional framework, and to discuss a little bit about like what kind of tools or strategies do you have actually to hold this position of conflict. I mean, maybe it's not conflict as a big conflict, but like a place of disagreement, or a place where there is a blind spot, I would say. So how do you find the blind spots, and then how do you hold the position of not closing it, right? Because it's not closing it. So it's not about solving the problem, it seems to me, but actually opening the problem and sustaining it in order for it to act, no? So the problem becomes an agency for actually thinking institutional critique. So if you could say something about the way you behave within the institution, or if there is any ideas about tools or strategies that you use within the institution. I mean, I came out with 3, which was like persistence, presence, and position as maybe a place to start from. So this will be my first. You have enough to come back? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how I will do this. So the performative aspect, how to keep spaces open, and staying with the problem, no? And strategies, no? Okay, I'll start with the performative. I'll start with the Jan van Eyck, because there I was not very aware of what I was proposing. No? So I made this kitchen, which was an intervention in a space that was not in agreement with what I proposed. And I waited for the other side to come to talk to me. So you could say it was a bit passive-aggressive, no? And it was also not nice to live in that space because it produces a lot of paranoia, a lot of tension. It's not an easy place to be. No? Not just myself, but with the colleagues and the rumors that go around and this pressure that you feel that was never dealt with. No? So later on I understood that the institution had agreed with it within themselves that the kitchen would stay at least for a year, but that was never communicated to me. I only knew about it later. So the strategies was to, like you said, to persist, not only persist, but to actually take that position, no? To be a bit more aware of that position, go for the dialogue, no? To be a bit more proactive in that sense, to try to create moments of dialogue, to be in contact with as many people as possible, and try to mediate whatever situation that was picked up or surfaced, which maybe, because that has to happen first, no? Something has to surface, and then I kind of point to it, and then once I point it, I have to also see with the people, are they seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, no? Because sometimes when you're put in that situation, the paranoia also puts you in a lot of self-doubt. So you don't know what you're seeing anymore.
So you'd say paranoia as a artistic tool?
Yeah. From Adriana and Pia, I learned that, yes. But it's not something I enjoy anymore. I don't like to be in that place. So that's why then the second moment of actually going for that conversation. And also to understand that these structures that are set by institutions, they are another medium, potential medium for artists, that we are able to propose things, we're able to shift things slightly, no? And then there are many references of artists who have had similar experience. One was quite important, was Miller, UK's performance artist, where she cleaned a vitrine of a mummy, I think in Philadelphia or in the US, and she made a performance of cleaning this vitrine. And then after that she put a little plaque, and then after she cleaned the vitrine, an art conservator had to clean the vitrine. It wasn't the normal person who cleaned the vitrine. So she was able to create this shift within that Natural History Museum or that institution through her artistic practice. And I thought that was quite interesting. How can we play with these things that we think are very solid, but in fact they're not, because, I mean, in some cases yes, but institutions are built by people, so it's a lot of it has a lot of the things that we take for granted are actually things that were set in place by the work of many people. So to go in there and then that's another strategy also, because once you do that, you create more work. No, people already streamline their role and their function in order to not be overworked, which is usually the case. No, so you also have to be attuned to that. No, not to create more work for people who are already overworked, because you want them in your side. You want to change things, so you have to mediate that too, so that you can't just be this rude guest that comes in and creates chaos and just leaves. No, you have to come, create a little bit, stir things up, maybe not chaos, but stir things up, and try to communicate and also be open to change your position too. I think Hemant did that to me. He made me understand the part of the book that I didn't understand, and also made me question how I view the institution, because I was just coming fresh off this experience with the Jan van Eyck, so I was a bit defensive. Mm-hmm. So he told me, no, pay attention. You know, what they're trying to make you do, which was to sign the book also, is actually in your favor. They're not trying to sabotage your projects. So Hemant somehow communicated that to me through his tags and stuff. So then I understood that other side, no? That these people are also
And what would you say that changes mainly? Like, I mean, so if we go from paranoia to what kind of relationship? Because in the second one, I see, also in the first one, I think it's all about minor stories, right? So there are many stories that are actually embedded within the institutional framework. And of course, these are also creating conditions for the work itself of the artists, right? So, and in there, something is moving in order to make these stories appear. Yeah. But I feel there is a strong will to actually reveal minor stories. So there is an operation there that makes that these stories are important, or maybe they are not more important, but they are.
There is a political conviction, no?
Yes.
So when I propose this position, then it has to be filled by artists, no? Originally I didn't want to make the job for myself, no? I wanted to make, it was an experiment. I wanted to create this job, to have other artists come in. It doesn't have to be one artist, it can be a collective or a series of artists. But I didn't manage to do that within the time span of the PhD, so I put myself in these positions. And when I come in, I have my own political positions and ideas, so that comes in with, no? So, and then the minor stories, these things, it's, let's say, more of my own interest that slips through and guides what gets picked up, what is fought for within these spaces. No? Probably if there was another artist doing this project, you would have maybe different, maybe with similar strategies, but you would have different outcomes, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, somehow, I don't know, it feels very important that the minor story comes about. And then maybe another question I have in relation to this is, how do you look at the books and the material you have? So what is the agency of the object as artwork or as post-artwork? Or I was thinking like, or the artwork is actually the stocks, or how also the position of the material or the content is actually performing in a series of versions, maybe, or something. I'm curious about these objects. Yeah, what are they? And what kind of status do they have?
Yeah, no. During our pre-defense, if I can undisclose this, you asked something similar, and that's why today I brought all this paper trail. This is it. No, it's not just here. So this book is actually in this other book, and all these other books. So and books by fellow artists also. So the project expands, no, through all these different posters, publications, catalogs. Now I got a bit lost for the question, but how do I see?
No, but can be. I mean, is it a collection or is it a library? Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. But on how they, what is their agency actually? What are they for somehow? Because
I think for me it's a way of communicating these. These ideas and this will, no? I remember once when I was presenting the vinyl Plano B in Berlin, someone asked me, why should a scene be documented? Couldn't a scene just happen and disappear? And why are you doing this work to freeze time? And then I was a bit surprised by the question, but then at the same time, I'm one artist. I'm not an institution. I'm not the MoMA. I'm not Beaux-Arts. I'm not these big institutions. This is not. My gesture is not the same.
Are you a minor gesture as well?
Excuse me?
Are you a minor gesture?
I think so. No, I'm just an artist doing a PhD, and so this is a proposal. If it's going to be picked up, it's not up to me. Then it's another kind of discussion. So people who deal with culture in a much larger scale, or I don't know if larger scale, but in a different point of view, no, of the context of the cultural field. So Plano B, it's that, no. For me, it's how do I get it was important to have this very long cover. All the bands who play there hopefully are here. It was a lot of work tracking this down. This is a clue. So if someone would be interested in Plano B, let's say in 10 years, through this record, they know who played there. That's basic, because you cannot put all these bands in one LP. No? So each side is 30 minutes. So we have basically 30 minutes of 4 different performances, which is nothing compared to how large this archive is. But in the cover, you have a clue, no? That if an institution, if a curator, or even artist or whoever wants to research Plano B, then they can start here. Because before, all of this was stored in CDs, in blogs that don't even exist anymore. And so I felt it was important to have something like this to remain. And then, for example, here it's a text by Fernando, who wrote back when Plano B was still going strong. So it's not a text that looks back, it's a text in the moment. And hopefully I can continue. I printed enough covers to do a second edition. I still don't have the money to do the second edition, but I have the covers, which is like a kind of a sort of a promise / something I need to do still.
I think we have to finish.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. We might give it a second try to have Brazil on the line. No? Yeah, okay. If this is there a solution, or
Pode ser. It can be okay. Can you hear me clear? Yes.
Yeah. Hello. Ricardo.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hi.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Paulo, maybe you give me, because I will talk on the phone, no? Because you will have to hear me.
Okay.
Okay, Ricardo, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Is my sound going to the room or just for you?
Both.
Okay. I'm sorry for the technical problem. So, good afternoon for everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And my question is related to some layer of institutional critique that you have in your work. You related to 4 different types of institutions. And I'd like to know, I'd like to make you talk about the 4 different protocols that you had to work to be able to relate to the Jan van Eyck Academy, to the Antwerp Academy, to Instituto Moreira Salles, and to Plano B. Because in each of these 4 types of institutions, you had to develop certain specific ways of relating to them and negotiate to them. So what kind of agent, I mean, the artist, the producer, the researcher, the educator, the manager, the curator, the student. So you had to reinvent yourself in 4 different ways. So can you talk a little about that?
Okay, I'll try to answer. Can you hear me now? Because I put the phone down.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. So the different roles. Well, first, I mean, yeah, knowing your work helped me understand these different roles. No, in the book I mentioned about your concept of etc. artist, and that an artist doesn't have to be only an artist. He can be a professor artist, curator artist, or whatever combination that you can think of, which allowed me to then think, okay, if I can be this artist slash something or something slash artist, then I can take on different roles with every different project, which is a strategy also to keep this fun, no? Because otherwise it gets repetitive, no? It's one of the reasons why I also left a little bit the studio practice, was to challenge myself and also to learn these different roles. So this concept, etc. artist, was quite important for me to understand this potential or this possibility of taking up these different roles. And then, with each, like you said, I worked with different types of institutions. So Jan van Eyck, for example, is a post-academic institute in the Dutch scene. So it's a place for research outside of academia. We came in, previously the participants would come in as researchers. With the change of the program, we are now seen as participants only. With the book Samba Shiva, I came as an artist who won a prize, a grant, to work with a non-profit private institution in Brazil. There, I took up the role of artist editor, which allowed me a different relationship with the institution, gave me some access to some of the resources of the institution in terms of staff and knowledge in order to do the task at hand. I've never edited a book before. I've made artist book, but not such a book. So it was necessary to have people to guide me. So this role placed me a little bit closer to the institution. I wasn't just an artist who was dealing with an editor. I was an artist, editor, dealing with the institution, and also my father, the photographer. Now, I forgot to answer, but on the Jan van Eyck, I was this participant who wished to be acknowledged, or who wished to be referred as a researcher, but came in too late, maybe. Things change. The Royal Academy, I came in as a, and then in the PhD, it's many different roles, no? Because in the Belgian context, the academy is not part of the university. So technically, I'm a PhD student at the university and a researcher doing research at the academy. So in one institution, I'm a student. In the other institution, I'm a researcher. And in the institution that I was a researcher, I was also given the opportunity to teach and then to see myself in a different way within that institution. And once that started to happen over the years, you know, I created certain relationships with the different people, with the students who, for example, Avi, Julia, and Felix, who proposed the survey. They were in one of the classes I conducted, a master class I conducted. So I got to know them then. So that, that made their invitation, but also the reintroducing the survey possible, because the academy gave me the opportunity to teach and to see myself in the institution in a different way, and also then I could move around here a little bit different. You know? I'm not just this researcher who comes in every now and then who wants to deal with the bureaucratic things, but someone who's actively engaging with the students and also making this institution. So I felt, let's say, the liberty or encouragement, but also the support to be able to propose this. Otherwise, maybe I wouldn't, or maybe it would come in a different way. I don't know. So it was also this. So maybe I think I'm moving a little bit from the question. So I'll go to Plano B. Just to wrap up, Plano B. I'm working with Fernando. No, Fernando is someone I respect, someone who ran a space for 10 years, with the help of Fatima, so I see him and me more as a colleagues, or I don't know. It's a different relationship. And Plano B is not the institute; it's an artist run. No? It's something that's coming from that side. No. So there I try to help, you know, I try to bring the resources that I have from the PhD to make the vinyl possible, to buy hard drives, to be able to back up this archive. So I try to facilitate, maybe it's, to produce the record and things like this. So there I'm more of a colleague, maybe a little bit of a curator, maybe a little bit of a producer, I don't know yet. But again, Plano B is still ongoing, so I want to see where it leads me. I still don't know.
Right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
At the Zoom? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Vijay, for your answer. There is just a complement to my question. Which is from all different roles as a sort of artistic or cultural agent, is the artwork necessary, let's say? Where is it? Is it in a conversation, in a performance, in a space, in an object? Do we need this moment of the artwork? Where is it located, or should you, let's say, move around this possibility and just keep a sort of distance? Because that's what I see in your research, a sort of continuous negotiation of where is the so-called art piece. I mean, is it necessary for all those movements, or is it in a constant shift in terms of different possibilities of framing what we could nominate the art piece? So I think it would be interesting to hear you about that sort of negotiation, locating, defining, escaping. Where is it? Is it necessary, the art piece? And where is it going or moving?
Well, for me, when I proposed this position, this job position, I imagined that for the experience to work, it would be, maybe it would be too, it wouldn't work if this artist who would come in this position would just then make exhibitions, either as a curator or something close to the public event, or this moment of exchange with the public. I didn't manage to go very far because I wasn't able to create the position, and I was only able to touch on certain aspects of this position through the different projects. They're still very much close to that space of this public event, of making things public, which in fact is not what I'm interested in. I would be much more interested if I could go deeper into the institutions, of dealing with the administrative side, of dealing with the decision-making, the daily decision-making of an institution. So in my head, it was, and because of the PhD, the conditions of the PhD, I stopped, let's say, exhibiting. I did exhibit, but much less than before. And I stopped making work, but that was already dealt with before. So I wanted to push to see if I stopped making artwork, if I stopped making exhibitions, how would the practice then develop? And then I took some clues from my advisor, Nico Dockx, who has a practice of this nature, who publishes a lot, organizes a lot of different events, teaches, and works in that manner. So and then also here I had the conditions and the resources to publish more than I would maybe in Brazil back then. And then about the artwork specifically, I think, again, during our pre-defense, you said something that was quite interesting. You talked about how, let's say, the modern artwork still had this impact, let's say, in culture and society, and the contemporary artwork, maybe because it's so mediated by the different institutions and things of that nature, it's very hard to distinguish where the work ends and the institution starts, because the mediation is it overlaps so much. So then I thought, after you said that, then okay, then take away the artwork, and then it's just me and the institution. So then a different type of practice, different type of work emerges, hopefully. And that's the attempt here, to go towards that direction. And for it to continue, that will depend a lot on the chances, conditions that I will have in front, and other people who have similar work, to continue this kind of work, because it's also, it doesn't have the same space as other practices that have a more defined forms of exhibiting, what's an artwork, where the different roles are well defined. So let's see. So and then maybe I didn't answer, but for me the artwork is not important anymore in the traditional way of understanding it, or of an object. I'm much more interested in this kind of shape-shifting, precarious, let's say, objects, and where that that it could be seen differently by a person who's not from the arts and a person who is very much engaged in contemporary art, that it can still function. Like my father's book, if someone goes to a bookshop in Brazil now, he will see the book, he will buy the book, or she will look at the book and you'll see, this is a book of an Indian photographer who was a scientist. That person does not need to know me, the artist, to get into that book, no? The book can have its own life, parallel life, no? If the person is not aware of contemporary art or me or anything like this. So I'm interested in that. Plano B to see how this vinyl continues this story, and if it continues. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, I think I don't have any more time. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be in contact, and congratulations for all the work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure hearing you in various voices and seeing you on screen. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I now give the floor to Saddie Choua from Rits and St. Lucas, Antwerp. We will hear you loud and clearly. You are in person here.
Hello. Dear Vijay, looking at your work, I notice a lot of taking care. So also the hands, for example, what we saw today, the hands that take care. You take care of the work of your father. You also said today that you became also an artist because you didn't want to leave him alone in this process. Of course, the kitchen where you take care of the other residents, for example. It's about food and so on. The artist-run organization. So for me, there is a lot of taking care, and taking care, it's a lot of giving. So I was also wondering if there is also receiving. So I was thinking about, is it also important to receive? Like what can, for example, I was thinking about what can return actually. It's obvious what can return to them, but also what can return to yourself, or what can return to us as artists in institutions, for example. And so the question is a little bit like, do you also see this as a method or as a way to install this dialogue, or a way to do institutional critique, or to restore maybe the power relations that you came across? So maybe you can tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the receiving. It's complicated because, for example, this book, I received a production grant prize. I didn't have to spend it all in the book. It was 65,000 reais. Back then it was roughly 20,000 euros. Now it's 10 or something like that, 12. I spent all the money making the book. The printing, I paid Hemant, I paid Beatriz, I paid the designers. Everyone was paid. I think in the end, I received 1,000 euros or something. I managed to keep 1,000 because making a book like this is very expensive. So when I went into negotiating the contract, they gave me a standard contract with my name, and then I said, no, it's my father, and then we managed to put both of us in that contract. The standard contract was 10%. And then I said, I want more, because I invested 20,000. So they gave me a prize production. I put that money back into that institution. I gave them a publication, actually. So I was able to negotiate 20%, which is symbolic. No, it's not money, actually. I mean, because the amount that you sell, books are sold, and it's not real. I wish I was more business savvy and made a better deal. And I talked that day in São Paulo, I mentioned that I don't know if I got the better stick of the deal, because I didn't get paid in a way to do that work. And I was only able to do that work because I was being employed by the academy. So the PhD gave me the conditions to do this kind of work, because it gave me a salary for 4 years. I was paid, so I didn't have to worry about that. So I worked on this book for like 18 months. But then also there was, in order to publish this kind of book, because the Instituto Moreira Salles publishes monographs, exhibition catalogs. So this book fell off a little bit their kind of more traditional publishing. So they created a new book series, which is, it says here. So this book, winner of the Zoom Photography Grant, given by Instituto Moreira Salles in 2016, is the first publication of the Zoom EM/EMS book series. Zoom is the contemporary photography side of the institution, and Instituto Moreira Salles deals with photography, music, literature, and more things. So in a way, the book created this new series that would allow in the future artists to publish more experimental publications within that institution. So I see the seeds there. Maybe with more experience, I'm able to negotiate more to make sure things stay and leave. For example, the kitchen is there, but no one knows anymore who initiated the kitchen. So it was Rachel O'Reilly, Alessandra Saviotti, me, no? And then the other participants who complained about the cafe, and then they made this kitchen, but they never invited me to have a talk or anything like that. I will try again to maybe launch this book and talk about the experience again. So again, giving, but not receiving, but we'll see. Patience. I don't know. And then the thing also with this project, a lot of people understood the project as something like fighting for better wages for artists or fair pay, which I totally agree with, but this was not the case yet. Because I didn't want to just ask for the equal pay, or I mean I do, but I wanted to, I don't know how to explain yet, but it was through an artistic practice. No? I wanted to embed my practice in order to be paid for the practice and not for kind of a side job, or sometimes people would understand that, okay, you be employed by the museum, which lots of museums employ artists. You have that as a day job. On the side, you do your practice. I wanted to mix the two, so it's not a practice and making living. It's both. So that was the attempt. Does that answer? Or in the care? Yes. Yeah. I mean. For example, the kitchen, I mean, how will a director close such a thing? No? It's benefiting the people who this institution is made for or runs for. No? Not just that group of artists, but the larger context of the culture or Dutch art scene. No? Because it's not always just the artists, individuals there, but what that institution produces in that context, no? Over time. So you create something that benefits the people who are there to produce. I mean, Hope mentions that for the institution it was a good deal, because then the artists are able to work at night or whenever they wanted, or even longer. So I was able to keep it open, or we were able to keep it open, because it served a collective need and not an individual need. And it wasn't a conscious strategy. It was just because we needed a place to store the fridge that Rachel had already bought, that was in the hallway, that the director wanted to throw out. So I said, no, I'll open my studio, bring in the fridge, someone else brings the hot plate, someone else brings the kettle, and we make a kitchen, and we just leave it open. And then this is an artist studio, so if they would come in to remove it, then I could claim, okay, this is my creative space, my atelier. So and that institution respected that space, so then they didn't want to go in. So I was able to shield through that, through this artist studio, no? So yeah, so I don't know. I think also because of my experience working with galleries and worrying mainly about my own career, I got a bit tired of it. Didn't excite me anymore, no? It was a different kind of paranoia, a very lonely paranoia. At least now it's a bit shared. I have peers, we talk, we understand, and it's a productive paranoia, no? You learn. Before it was just so that's why and then it's maybe it was the care there was trying to develop a collective practice with others. And this is the way I reached out, somehow.
And then do you think that it's because of the collective that you could question the institutions?
I think so, yes, to a certain degree, yeah. I mean, then the institution has to answer to many people, no? Yeah, for example, the survey, it's not just me, it's me plus the alumni, plus the 50 people who wrote the survey, and plus society that's looking at these changes, or at this request of change, or this historic moment that we're faced in. So it's a topic that needs to be talked about, or it needs to be discussed, and it cannot just be put aside. So then I understood that if you bring this up, it's not going to be easy to just wish it away, no? Because it's not answering just to me, it's answering to pressure that comes from outside, from society, different levels, and their own body of students. So it goes on. And again, that's the paranoia from the other side. not mine this time, but the other side. So you play with that a little bit too. Not in a, how to say, mischievous way, but hopefully respectful and responsibly, I hope. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will leave some time to the other members.
Thank you, Vijay. So you joined a.pass a year ago, so I've got to know your work a bit over the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. My impression is that specific position, or sort of the performativity with which you enter institutions for this research, is a specific choice when you encounter certain conditions. And my question is sort of, what does trigger that performativity when you enter an institution? Is there something? Yeah. What is it within the institutional structure that triggers that agency in you? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think it's the poor working conditions. I don't know. Most of the times, yeah. I don't know. I mean, in the book, I write a little bit this kind of small intro text. I mean, most of the institutions, if not all institutions that I've been in the past 10 years, or at least in Europe, since I came to study in 2009 to do my master's, they were going through some kind of cuts, austerity politics, and cuts either for the education or for culture itself. So these institutions were already under pressure of these cuts, and then because of that, they make decisions for the artists. And then when we experience those conditions, or those decisions made into conditions, I don't think we would agree most of the times, no? Because these decisions are made without us most of the times. I don't know. And then, so we tend to accept bad conditions already, no? Because it's just, how things go about in the art field. But once you live in these conditions, and then these are like residencies of 1 year and things like that, then it's also your life, no? And Alessandra mentions this in the book a lot, about how some decisions are made by a new director or by administrative staff regarding our life, no? We are living in a place for 1 year, we are working there, and okay, maybe we accept that condition first to be able to enter the place, no? Because we apply to these places. It's not like someone invites you to be in a residency. I mean, at least not in my case. I applied, and then you accept these conditions, but once you're there, maybe these conditions are not that great. And then I wish, or I would like to be able to then question that and renegotiate that, no? It seems only fair, I think, no? If I'm going to spend 1 year of my life in a new country, new city, where I have no social relations, then at least I need to feel like I'm part of what's happening to me, no? You know, something like that. And then there are the personal things, no? Personal convictions and things like that. And when you see maybe situations that are a bit unjust or that you don't agree with, then it's a moment to voice your opinion or to voice how you understand that. And then every context has their kind of, let's say, I don't know, a way of dealing with things, and then you have to renegotiate that. I don't know.
Yeah, we in our conversations we talked about something that you called institutional plasticity.
Or you call it.
Collaboration. I think you developed a kind of a practice through like entering with an uncertain job description to somehow trigger institution into plasticity, or to recognize institution as inherently plastic. And yeah, I appreciate that very much about your work. I keep wondering if that plasticity or the activation of the plasticity is sort of conditioned on the artist's job description, or is there some kind of permeability to other job descriptions? If we sort of start fantasizing, is there something part of that toolkit that you've developed that can permeate into other job descriptions to understand the institution as plastic?
Yeah, that's something that hopefully, I think there is, no? But that's the thing, like for example with the studio, I was able to play I was able to use the artist studio as leverage. So I was able to keep the space, the kitchen open because it was an artist studio. I imagine if I was the staff of the institution and I would do that in my workspace, probably I would be fired. So far I only located that within the role of the artist, no? Because for some reason society or people tend to give a certain artistic freedom, or they limit a certain area where the artist has complete freedom or something of that nature. I work within there, I think. I don't know how that would, but I guess it could. I mean, it's just a question of a goodwill from the institution to learn from one experience and to maybe create. And I think even that's not enough, no? Because that's like still from, I think, to create more democratic processes within institutions. And you also talk a lot about the labor of change. So how do you institute, or how do you make sure that the labor of change, no? How does that is paid for?
Part of the
institution, exactly. So that the institution also pays for the labor that it needs to change itself or renovate certain parts of it. Yeah. And that's not something that just happens when crisis hits, as a kind of a reaction to some moment of crisis, which then usually it's these knee-jerk reactions that turn these institutions even more rigorous and more hard, which was the case of the Van Eyck. Then, you become even harder, and there's no dialogue with the artist. Then.
Yeah, I wonder if the potential is somehow, because you said you're interested in this artist, etc. So this kind of ambiguity of the job description, the access that is within the etc. That the potential somehow is in the etc. So any student etc. and like.
Maybe I misunderstood you.
No.
Because I understood how do you pass it on to other.
Exactly. Yeah, and
other cultural workers.
No, you understood correctly. Yeah, and but I'm just saying maybe that passing on is in the etc.
Could be, or the slash artists.
Exactly.
That they take the artists away from us. Please.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I just answer a little bit just about the plasticity, or do we have time?
Of course.
Yeah. So, for example, the defense, something I wanted to say, I didn't know how to explain. But for me, when I came to a.pass, because you mentioned it came to my head, I applied to a.pass because I wanted to be evaluated by a.pass also in this process. So we have today 2 members of a.pass, Lilia and Vladimir. One worked close to me as an external advisor, and Lilia as a jury member. So it was also important for me to be evaluated by an artist-run art school, post-academic institution. And that's the plasticity is there, to see every moment as a moment of proposing things. So the defense is also part, not the whole defense, but this gesture is also part of testing these places and these structures to see how far they can go.
Okay. As chair, I will briefly give some comments and ask 1 or 2 questions. We have less than 20 minutes left. So Vijay, I want to congratulate you on the work done. I've been following it from the start as a member chair of your committee, and I was always fascinated by the way you look at power relations in institutions, in art institutions, how you look at institutional change, and how you, in a way, were surprised by or questioned the obvious, namely that organizations, also art organizations, have patterns, procedures, protocols, discourses, and I mean, an organizational sociologist would have approached that same theme on a totally different way. You approached it as an artist. Never radical, never one-sided, always nuanced, well thought. And your small interventions were like small steps, careful steps to try and, in a way, provoke the institution or the people working in that institution, in the institutions. What also is fascinated me is that you are highly reflective. You take one step and then you reflect on that step and you share your reflections with people in workshops, in talks, etc., etc. And then these talks become part of the process, as is also visible in your book. So in a way, I don't know if people in the audience are familiar with Columbo, the detective that was on television in, let's say, the 70s and 80s, and I would like to compare you to Columbo, because as a detective he used a method that was once explained by me by a lawyer, my boss when I was working in a law firm, a repressed past, by the way. He said, Philip, as a lawyer, you always have to, because I was surprised by the way how he could ask these naive questions to the counterparts or to other lawyers, and he said, no, that's my Columbo method. That's the way I approach, because people, institutions, procedures, they will come to the open if you address them that way. So in a way, you, playing naive, manage to get people to open up, to show their hidden agendas. And then, in a second step, you would, I wouldn't say kill them, but you would attack them on. So I admire that method, because what you expose is, in a way, you could say the irony, but I maybe even would call it the cynicism of the art world and the art market. We mentioned here in the defense how you played with the paranoia of the other. One beautiful example is that when you made the kitchen in the Van Eyck Academy, the only way you had gotten it accepted, it was if you would have told your supervisors that it was a work of art. So if you, as an artist, say, my kitchen is a work of art, then they would have accepted it. But
actually, they proposed for me to frame it as a work of art.
They suggested it to you, but you refused to do
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's my point. Yeah? So you push institutions, you annoy institutions by challenging the obvious, and then in the end, we as audience of your procedures see the results, and it's very inspiring. Okay. Yeah? Okay, just two questions. One is, what are your next projects, and how has your PhD inspired you more than just another art project? Will you become an activist? Will you make no art at all? I mean, how do you see your job description as an artist for the future? And the second question is, I think there is one step in your whole process that you could have questioned more. I mean, you did it, but you could have questioned it more, which is a PhD in the arts. What in the hell is a PhD in the arts, and how can you not challenge this as an institutional construction?
Okay. I will start. I don't think I was naive. I think I acted in good faith, and that good faith was not responded. And then maybe I changed my strategy, but I don't think I was naive.
No, you played naive. Yeah?
I don't think so. Maybe I was too polite. Maybe. Yeah. What I will do after the PhD? Let's go there. I'm trying to find a job. I would like to get a job. No, I would like to continue this. I don't know how it will continue. For me, like you said, the PhD in the arts, it created the conditions in order for me to work this way. I talked about a photo book that was published in 2017. I talk about it for 5 years. You know, I still present it. So I make very little things that could be considered works or projects, and I talk about them extensively. You know, like you mentioned, the reflective component. So the PhD allowed me to do that. No, very basic things. No, I had a salary. I had resources to travel. So when I was invited these places, I could pay the ticket. I could go. So the PhD in the arts allowed a transformation of a practice, which was much more medium-specific, photography, video, some video projects, and then it allowed to become this, what I would call now an institutional practice. How I would continue, I think I place enough seeds for some things to be picked up, but it's also, I don't know. Let's see what would happen. But I would like to continue teaching. I enjoyed the experience. I think I see it as practice too. I don't see it differently. I see it's the same thing. So it's not either or. And then to question the PhD in the arts. I don't know. I would think I have. I don't know. No, that's fine. I think I have done it, but. I don't know. I've been hearing about this debate on the PhD in the arts and artistic research for 13 years. I'm a bit tired of it. I want to move on. We are already in this space. We already managed to be in this space, to get this space, and to question it is to use it, to propose new things, to use this space, which was not a given, no? That was required for artists and academies to create. And once it's created, maybe it's not the question anymore of just questioning it, but questioning it through embodying it, engaging with it. So the PhD in arts, in the way I see it, allowed for a practice that would not be able to survive outside of it. So that's already important for the diversity of a healthy cultural field, no? That you have different types of practices, different types of interests, different types of way of doing it, so that we can have a lively debate, and not so that practices don't only answer to one type of economy or institution or thing of that nature. So this is a space that's open now. Who knows if it's going to remain open or as open as it is, no? In Antwerp, for example, it's a very open PhD. In a lot of places it's not like this. So how do we keep it open? Huh? And then I think it's by maybe challenging the academic PhDs, which in this case does not need to be challenged because it's already open. I don't have to write the thesis. No? I have to have a reflective component, which became this book, but it's not written in academic language. No? It's much more sort of a storytelling, essayistic format. So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. No, and luckily it's not written in academic discourse. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public defense. We have come to the end of the Q&A, so I open up the floor for questions of the audience. There is a question in the back. Just a second.
Thank you. Vijay, I was just, when you got the question, what's going on further now after your PhD, I was just going to mention that Vijay just became a member of our artist collective, NICC, which is very much reflecting on what Vijay's research is about. So we're very happy to have him in our group. And I think that's already a nice outcome. So we're going to benefit from your knowledge and your research. Thank you for that.
It's true, I forgot to mention, I'm part of the board at NICC in Antwerp. I came in on January, I think, beginning of the year. Cell invited me, so I'm part of this board that works with different projects to fight for artist rights and to keep the practice, the field diverse. And I'm also doing a project with Kiosk in Ghent as an etc. artist, where I'm a bit of a wild card within their team. I'm able to propose projects, I'm able to take on projects. I have a little budget to propose things. So that's one of the things that are continuing at the moment. NICC and Kiosk with Simone Delobel, who's the director now in Ghent. Yeah.
An easy question. So we can finish the first official part of this PhD defense. The jury will retreat for deliberation. Please do not run away. We come back quite soon for the proclamation.